Hey, and welcome to the highlights of episode number 173 with Dr. Will Cole. Some of my favorite parts of this episode were when he shares about the power of being a Ketotarian, the health benefits of a predominantly plant-based diet, and how we can de-stress. We all need a little bit more of that. But there is so much more wisdom, inspiration, and knowledge that you get in the full episode. So, to listen to the full podcast and get all the info in the show notes, head on over to melissaambrosini.com/173 right now. Welcome, Will. I am so excited to have you on the show today. So can you tell us from your perspective why a majority plant-based diet is the way to vibrant health and reducing inflammation?
Our bodies are alive because of brilliant biochemistry, and the foods we eat instruct our biochemistry. And most of the health problems that we see today and most of the reason of how long we live or how short we live is due to choices we make or this field of epigenetics. And these are the lifestyle things like the foods that we eat, but also our stress levels and activity levels and exposure to environmental toxins. These epigenetic factors are constantly and dynamically instructing our genetic expression. So the foods that we eat wield a lot of power in turning off and turning on genes and influencing our microbiome, which is the foundation of health. So as you had said, there's so much concrete evidence of showing plant foods being a positive instructor of our genetics, a positive instructor of our biochemistry and our microbiome, which is really the foundation of health.
Tell us about your story and how you got to where you are today doing this amazing work that you're now doing.
Yeah, I've been seeing patients for the past 10 years. And I grew up in the wellness world in the sense of my parents were interested in health. And this was before it was cool on social media. There was no social media in the 1980s and the 1990s in the countryside of Pennsylvania. Most people were not interested in wellness and health, but I was the kid drinking the weird adaptogenic tonic and having sprouted this and raw organic that. But I wasn't the coolest kid to have like a sleepover, but I was that set the foundation of what I knew about food and health and wellness. I knew I wanted to get into healthcare. I'd gone to an integrative school called Southern California University of Health Sciences in Los Angeles. And a guy called Datis Karazian had gone to my school. He was older than I was. And he was talking about this thing called functional medicine. And I really loved it from the moment I heard about it. And now, all these years later, I see patients around the world. About 90% of my patients are via webcam consultations. And I just stand here at my standing desk consulting people about this field of healthcare, looking at the root cause of why they're sick and giving a functional medicine perspective on their case. But it really, all of that had its beginnings when I was growing up and learning about food and about herbs and about wellness as a whole. So it really and I think this probably is applicable for all of us, that our youth and what we're exposed to from a young age can really set the stage for how we see the world and what we do.
How can we instill this within our children without being pushy and, just allowing them to come to it within themselves? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think as parents know, every kid is different. So I think you have to kind of speak their love language in that way and how they receive information and things. So it has to be on an individual basis. But as a general rule, you want to make it age appropriate and you want to make it fun and you want to make it non-dogmatic and really just educate them on their level in a way that resonates with them. I think that's important, where it's not about, oh, you can't have all these foods, but it's like, okay, how can you love your body enough to nourish it with good foods? Oh, look at all the stuff you get to eat and focus on all of that. So instead of it being this dieting thing that really nobody should be focusing on, this restrictive, punishing your body, this boring thing, eating like a rabbit to be healthy, this is not where we're at, I think, as a culture anymore. And I think that we need to shift the paradigm within ourselves first, but then ultimately kind of share this love of wellness, this fun of wellness to our kids as well.
So, for someone who has never heard the term functional medicine, can you please explain what that is?
Sure. So, another word for functional medicine is integrative medicine or systems medicine, because we're looking at the underlying systems of the body that give rise to our health or lack thereof. So, the main differences between functional medicine and mainstream medicine, if you had to sort of break it down, number one, in functional medicine, we interpret labs using a thinner reference range. So anybody that's listening is going to know, hey, when I go to my GP, I'm going to have my number on the lab and then this reference range. Well, we get that reference range, that normal quote unquote range, from a statistical bell curve average of people who go to labs. And if you go to another lab, you'll see that reference range will vary from lab to lab. With a few exceptions, most of them are not standardized. So we have to ask the question, who are people that are typically going to labs? They're people with health problems. And just because something's common doesn't make it normal. And comparing yourself to the common people who go to labs isn't doing you any good to understand what's the root reason of why you're going through what you're going through. So in functional medicine, we take people with health problems out of that reference range to see where optimal vitality is. Where is your body functioning the best? Hence our name, functional medicine. So we're looking at this optimal health range instead of the gray area, because there's a lot of people that are in this gray area where they're not outside the lab's reference range, but they're still symptomatic. They still don't feel well. They aren't living a vibrant, healthy life. That's the first thing we do. And the second thing we do in functional medicine is we run more comprehensive labs. So we're looking at these root facets that give rise to health problems. So things like microbiome problems or toxicity issues or viral infections or bacterial overgrowths, whatever the case may be. We want to look to the root pieces of the puzzle that explain why somebody feels the way that they do. So in functional medicine, we're trying to move past that label of the diagnosis code and actually get to the root reason why they're struggling. So that's in a nutshell what functional medicine is. We use food as medicine. We use herbal botanical medicines. We use medications when needed. We use lifestyle changes, really to be holistic and comprehensive, but based on labs and evidence.
But I'm curious to hear, in your latest book, Ketotarian, I love the title, by the way. I thought that was awesome. But we can't really stand here and say that keto is for everyone, because in my house, like, my husband is a very Vata body type, and he did ketogenic diet last year and it almost killed him. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I wrote Ketotarian, because it's a plant-based ketogenic book. I think if you look at the way that the ketogenic diet is done on social media, you'll see lots of meat and dairy, bacon and cheese. And that's good for some people in the short term. They'll lose weight and they're off of a lot of the garbage and the refined junk food of the standard Western diet. But what does long-term wellness look like for this way of eating? And I think a lot of people don't do well on lots of meat. They maybe have dairy sensitivities and they're avoiding vegetables and plant foods because it has varying amounts of carbohydrates, not knowing the fact that fiber, which is by definition carbohydrates, is actually really important for the microbiome and for our body. So that's why I created Ketotarian, to be a metabolic foundation for the body. So in Ketotarian, I explained to go 8 weeks plant-based keto. And by plant-based keto, I mean there's vegan keto, and someone could be completely vegan keto, or they could go vegetarian keto. They bring in some, pasture-raised eggs or ghee. And then there's pescatarian keto. And then do that for 8 weeks. And then from there, why are we doing that for 8 weeks? Is to create metabolic flexibility. It's to shift your body from being a sugar burner to a fat burner, which every human being could benefit from. Because most of us in the West, whether in Australia, in the United States, in the UK, throughout Europe, most of us are in varying forms of sugar burning mode. That is an option for people, but there is another option from a metabolic standpoint, and that is putting a log on the fire, and that is burning fat for fuel, healthy fats. And what I would say in Ketotarian, healthy plant fats primarily. And I think a lot of people do well with more of a cyclical Ketotarian approach, where they built that metabolic foundation, and flexibility, meaning that they are a fat burner. They do have great energy. They are at an optimal healthy weight for themselves, but they can go in and out of ketosis because they are at that better place of health during those 8 weeks of being plant-based keto.
I'm curious to hear, what are some of the problems that you see with a conventional ketogenic diet?
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. And I lay it out in Ketotarian, but the main ones are, I would say, a lot of it flows from macronutrients trumps quality of food. And that's how that they see it. Basically, as long as it's high fat, low carb, they go for it. And what that can lead to, not all the time, but can lead to a lot of times, is really eating any old food as long as it's high fat, low carb, as long as it's quote unquote keto. And that leads them to eating a lot of meats and processed meats and deli meats and any old dairy and avoiding vegetables. And I don't think that that's good for most people long term. Again, short term, I, I don't deny that it's better than the standard Western diet. But just because something's better doesn't mean it's optimal. And just because you're off of sugar now doesn't mean that it's going to be long term good for your health.
But I'm curious to hear your thoughts for someone who is listening who thinks, food is a stressful thing and maybe they're dealing with orthorexia. How can they move through it?
Well, I think you need to talk to somebody that is qualified. I think with any eating disorder, you need to find a qualified therapist to walk you through it. And I think that a support system is important. I think acknowledgement is important. I think that getting help professionally is important with this too. And, from a functional medicine standpoint, we do a lot when it comes to helping somebody heal their relationship with food and making food their friend. And look, a lot of times people become orthorexic, most of the time, I would say, actually, because of a real health problem. And their food is causing these reactions and these symptoms in themselves that the orthorexia was born out of their real physiological health problems and gut issues and autoimmunity. That's what I see a lot. But because of the real physical issues, now it's becoming this mental emotional issue too. So at that point, my job as a functional medicine practitioner is to deal with the physiological things that actually cause all this mess. But then at the same time, there has to be a mental emotional support too from a qualified therapist in eating disorders. So I think that, we all need to work together as healthcare professionals to get this person well again.
So, what is your advice for people that come and see you who you can see are highly stressed and it's not just affecting their choices with food, but it's affecting every single area of their life? Like, what do you recommend?
I recommend finding a practice that resonates with you. For me and a lot of my patients, what resonates with us to create calm and to create a presence, which is, I think, a diffuser of stress, is mindfulness practice. Specifically, just it's very simple of just becoming aware of your breath and observing your breath. And a second component to that is becoming aware of what Eckhart Tolle calls your inner body, or just basically your body's aliveness, like the vibration of your body and feeling it in the present moment. So I think those are anchors in the present moment, which are diffusers of stress. Because then you start realizing, whoa, this stress isn't me. These thoughts and emotions aren't me. I'm just observing them. And that allows a lightness and a grace to happen, to allow those things to come and go and be less stagnant, less rooted in your being, because you realize they're just passing through. So that's one. And out of present moment awareness will flow healthy actions with whatever you need to do in the present moment. So I think a mindfulness practice is paramount for managing stress and putting stress in context.
Okay, so I want to touch on what are the benefits of this more plant-based ketogenic diet?
Yeah. So specifically, I love the research around being in these times of ketosis. So if you go 8 weeks plant-based keto, and then you'd maybe do a cyclic or cyclical ketotarian. Some people do a seasonal ketotarian where maybe in the summer they'll enjoy more fresh fruits and watermelon and strawberries and fruits like this. And then in the winter, they'll naturally be more ketotarian. And that's something that our ancestors would have done as well. And then, so let me just say that. What are the benefits of eating this way, of having this metabolic foundation of being a fat burner, is that beta hydroxybutyrate, the main ketone, actually can pass through the blood-brain barrier, and it provides the brain clean energy, which I think is great. It actually enhances what is called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, which you need to make new neurons. The old thought was, you only have so many brain cells, and then if the brain cells die, you don't have any more. Well, the reality is your body has the innate ability to produce new neurons, and you need BDNF to do that. And one way to enhance BDNF is nutritional ketosis. And another mechanism that I love with being in this time of being plant-based keto is that back to the inflammation level. I think this is fascinating, the way that our body can naturally do this. Because when your body produces beta hydroxybutyrate, all these pro-inflammatory cytokines that just about every health problem that we see today, at least to some degree, is inflammatory. So this ketone lowers something called NF-kappa B, which is this pro-inflammatory cytokine. It lowers these other inflammasomes, and it increases these pro-antioxidant pathways, which antioxidants are healthy, where your body naturally does this. It increases the AMPK pathway, the NRF2 pathway. These are disease-fighting pathways, which is why so much research is being done on the ketogenic diet as far as cancer and decreasing insulin resistance and lowering inflammation levels. And these are the pathways that they're looking at. And I also love what it can do to the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are your cellular energy warehouses and factories. And ketones actually pass through the cell membrane and increase something called mitochondrial biogenesis, which is making new mitochondria. Not very many things can do that, but ketones can. So this is the wonderful power that your body has if you tap into it, if you allow it to. So it's something that I have seen clinically over the past 10 years and thousands of patients over the years. But it's really cool. Now that the book's out, I can look on social media and just look at hashtag Ketotarian, and I'm hearing all these cool success stories on Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook now, to see people that I've never met kind of take this information and do it in their own way on their own, which is really cool.
I'm a massive believer in we call them pattern breaks. So once our workday is finished, doing something that, like you said, because there's a different energy, shifting that energy so that you can step into, home, family, wife mode, and kind of close the door, close the laptop, turn the phone off from work mode. So for someone who's at home, what do you suggest in that case?
I think it could be something as just a few moments of like mindfulness breathing, but I actually think a really good resetter, like a recalibrator of energy mode. And I don't mean just energy mode like from a metaphysical standpoint. I just mean like your body energy of what you're feeling, your emotions, your thoughts, all of that stuff. A good recalibrator of that, I think, are baths, actually. I think a hot bath with some like Epsom salt, maybe some essential oils, and just soaking in that for like 15, 20 minutes and just breathe. Like, don't be on electronics or be distracted. Just breathe and calm down. I feel like that is a good recalibrator of one's energy. So if you work from home, or if you work out of home, that really can be a good line in the sand, so to speak, between work mode and home mode and family mode.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a massive fan of baths. What I usually do is do a meditation. So once I've finished my work and closed my laptop for the day, I usually finish the day, bookend the day with a meditation. And that really helps me transition, or a shower or a bath or something like that. That really is powerful for me.